On this episode of Keal, I discuss with Dr. Pilar the effects of social media on us, on our everyday lives, and what it'll mean for the future. So stay tuned for this episode. Dr. Pilar, I have an article open here that I want to read something off it to you as we start this episode on Keal. Social media and the effects on mental health. And just in the first paragraph says, since the release of smartphones, mental health concerns have increased in children and young adults. The rate of adolescents reporting symptoms of major depression in a given year increased from 52% from 2005 to 2017. From 2009 to 2017, it grew by 63% in adults ages 18 to 25. Experiencing psychological distress in a given month grew 71% in young adults from 2008 to 2017. And even worse, the rate of suicidal thoughts in young adults increased 47% during that same time. 47%. Doctor, I'm so proud more than anything, firstly, to have you on as our first guest on Keal. So thank you so much. You've been really favorite guest on Spearlift before, so thank you so much for agreeing to this. And I wanted to just ask you, Dr. Pilar, how much worse do you think this will get? I mean, I'm guilty of using social media to a large degree. I think most of us are, but especially I'm in my mind, I'm thinking a lot, especially about kids growing up with this. How do you envision the effects it's going to have socially in the way we interact and psychologically now and in the future?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be the first guest, and I wish you the best luck. About your question, well, if we don't try to control this, if we don't establish some basic rules, if we don't observe this new phenomenon from really close range, it will get worse, a lot worse. And we will totally lose control over it. And unfortunately, that will harm mostly children and adolescents. They are usually the ones who suffer the most from this kind of new technology or new ways to interact socially. I think nowadays most parents work, and perhaps they don't pay as much attention to their kids as they used to in the past, because life has gotten a lot more difficult nowadays. And it's not that they don't want to pay attention to their kids, but maybe they can't pay as much attention. And unfortunately, kids now have a pretty easy access to social media in general. Some people are too young to get online, but they lie about their age, so they create accounts with fake birth dates, and you can't control that because there's really no way of proving that they are old enough to use social media. And sometimes these kids are so young and so unsupervised that they can be viewing harmful content, and that can be very dangerous.
One of the documentaries that really had a huge impact on me was Social Dilemma on Netflix. That documentary talking about the way in which these social media companies really keep you especially hooked and addicted on the platform. And it shows the kid just going absolutely insane when he has his phone taken away from him. He can't interact with the world. He flips out. And I'm curious, and maybe if you could tell our audience, Doctor, like, are people in your field really addressing this issue, and are they addressing like certain entities or corporation to bring this to the forefront and letting those people know, like, you got to pay attention to this because otherwise it's really going to harm generations coming up? Just out of curiosity.
We are addressing it, but I think not enough, not as much as we should, because medicine, and especially psychiatry and psychology, have very little resources for research. So there's not a lot research going on. And as much research as we produce, it's never going to be enough to fight those great corporations such as Facebook or stuff like that, because they invest millions and millions in what you said before, trying to get you hooked on the platform and spend your whole life in it. So it's very hard. I think we're not doing enough, but some of us are trying. I mean, I think it's important to say that we use it also for positive stuff, such as giving people information, informing people about mental health, for example, in my case, about mental health stigma and where to receive the appropriate treatment, stuff like that, or maybe there are some support groups. I've seen those too. So it's not all bad, but this negative part, we definitely have to pay more attention to it.
No, that's excellent. That's great that there's work out there and like what you're doing yourself to really address this and take it full on and really help those in need. I'm curious, especially with the generations coming up, where they'll probably have a lot more immersion into all these apps and all these social things that are being used. Like, how in the world can you convince them to have a balance of using versus not using their phones?
I think a very important part here would be to, as I was saying, we have to do more research about it and then publish those results so people can see that we're not just making it up. The consequences emotionally, psychologically, socially about using phones all the time, being on social media all the time. We have to publish those consequences using the scientific method, so people can understand that we're not making it up. Also, I think the most effective way of fighting this would be to teach parents to comfort their kids without using phones, without using tablets, screens, the TV. They have to emotionally comfort their kids in other ways so the kids don't get used to using all these electronic devices to soothe themselves or to entertain themselves because they're bored, because they're angry, because they're hungry. Some parents just use it all the time for any reason. We have to teach them other methods to comfort kids, and we have to teach kids other methods to confront these emotional distress. And this might be a little controversial. I think that schools should focus more on maybe social interaction and physical activity and other activities, but not through social media, not through technology. Sometimes schools just focus on a lot of homework, a lot of projects, and kids have to be in front of a computer all day. They have to communicate through the phone with classmates to do projects and stuff, and we don't pay attention to other things that are very important, such as social interaction outside of electronic devices and physical activity and maybe other extracurricular activities, cultural activities, stuff that enhance creativity. We are not paying enough attention to that.
Those are such excellent and important points, because especially with kind of future generations sense, is it has to start with the parents now, has to start with the schools and what they do, the society at large, in approaching this in a different way. Because you're absolutely, because parents as well are just as guilty, like using every platform. I mean, literally it's everybody. That's the point, right? It's everybody. I mean, you can go to, wherever you live, and whatever their COVID situation is, I guess, like you can go to a lot of restaurants, and then you can, more commonly than not, see a family all sitting there with phones, the 5-year-old with a tablet, and no one's talking to each other, right? I mean, I've seen that millions of times, So I think the point you're making, I think that's a very critical thing. It's like, it's got to start somehow with the parents who are parents now, growing up their children, and the apparatus, you could say, in society at large, to reinforce that, right? I mean, and do you see, like, I kind of dream, Doctor, about, because I grew up as a kid in the 90s, and for me, it was just like, I didn't even use the computer, right? It was just a tool, or like, I gotta go type. Like, we hated the computer at those times. You go type that thing, and you got to go play that whatever. I mean, I hated it. Like, I didn't want a thing to do with it. Now it's like everything in your life, So if we can at least get back to the 90s, for goodness sake, for many reasons, it'd be great, But how, in your opinion, then, going more on that thread with the society and with the parents, like, what kind of messaging would have to come about to institute those kind of campaigns and policies? How do we get, because it's almost cultural, right? They say politics or societal policies are downstream from culture. So how do we culturally get people excited about, okay, let's go out in nature, let's do these things outside, let's just interact as a group together in person? How do we stimulate those kind of ideas to get them attracted to people?
That's a very tough question.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm asking you. You're the doctor.
I think a way to do it would be to take advantage of social media and really popular things, like, really popular people, such as influencers, to maybe give this message to the young people. It's cool to go out in nature. It's cool to visit new cities. It's cool to, I don't know.
but you're still going to use those same platforms to do that. It's like you're using the same thing. It's hard. That's a problem. I think that's the problem. Is our attention. Really, exactly, our attention and our involvement in the things that turn us on, again, goes right back to the phone. I mean, even when you go to the beach, even when you go to Acapulco, even when you go to Cancun or whatever, like, even when you're in the most beautiful scenic landscape imaginable that your eyes can barely contain, with the ocean and everything in all its majesty, you'll see a whole beach full of people on their phones. It's like, so how are you? That's the problem here, is like, because all the attention is on these things, and the way people get influenced with these things is on these things. When I say things, I'm talking about the devices, the outlets, the platforms, etc. That's what I mean by the things. So it's like, how do you divert that away to something else? I mean, it seems hard, no?
It's very hard. I mentioned these things and influencers and such because it would be a way to start getting in there, start getting in their heads, talking about other things, such as nature, or, I don't know, sports, many other things that we used to do when we were kids back in the 90s.
I dream of the 90s. You have no idea.
I know, except for the music, though.
Oh, come on! I'll go. That's going to be a whole different debate with you. Dude,
some other time.
I'll take you to town on that. You'll see.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you have to find ways to get in their heads, because that's where their heads are right now, unfortunately. That's why you are on YouTube right now.
I know.
Because maybe.
Sorry, everyone. Yeah.
Because if you were, I don't know, giving live conferences that were not broadcasted online, maybe no one would go see you, you know?
Yeah. No,
Or if you wrote on a magazine, maybe you wouldn't be as successful. It's a way to get into people's heads nowadays. So that's a way. But other thing that I would like to mention is that going back to this parenting, parents really have to validate their kids' emotions and their kids' thoughts and feelings, because nowadays you see that everybody seeks external validation through social media. You know, like I'm going to post this selfie and I'm going to use 1,000 filters so I can look good and with a tan and with, I don't know, blue eyes.
I do that all the time.
Yeah. So people give me a lot of likes, and then I can feel good about myself. If we don't make our kids feel good about themselves from childhood, they are going to end up seeking external validation elsewhere. And now the easiest way to get them to get external validation is through social media.
It's that right there, in my opinion, is the worst thing in the world. When it comes to that particular issue that you're talking about socially, I think that's where society can start to crumble in many ways, because look at like seeking that validation through even people you've never met before. It's like you have like 100 followers and you don't know one thing about any of those people, and then all of a sudden, you know, if half of them don't like you or something, then you go cry forever and whatever. And look, I'm not trying to demoralize anyone. I'm not trying to, you know, chastise anyone here, but I'm just saying it's a fact. A lot of people are getting depressed, especially younger people, because of what you're talking about, the social dynamic of this. Like that aspect in of itself is, I think, very potentially harmful now and towards the future as it relates to more and more heightened societal depressive related issues. Do you think so, Doctor?
Yeah, totally. It's like our self-esteem or our personal value as human beings depends on what other people think about us. And there are very severe critiques online, as you say, from people that really don't even know you, you know, that are only judging you through a photograph or through a video, but they don't have the whole context. You know, that happens a lot to celebrities, for example. You know, it doesn't matter how talented someone is. For example, I saw this post about Billie Eilish. I think she's really talented especially for someone that young. But it doesn't matter how talented you are or how much you have studied or how much you have prepared to get to where you are. She walked outside her home, I think, someday, and a paparazzi took a photograph of her, and everybody said she was fat and she looked ugly and she was sloppy, like she wasn't dressed up like she should be. Like we forget that, I mean, she's not in that business for her looks. I mean, she's there because of the music she makes, the way she sings, maybe, and people are judging her for something that really they shouldn't be. And when you analyze the photograph, she's totally a normal person. I mean, yeah. But no, people are saying she's fat, she's ugly, she's whatever. And you have no idea what effect that that kind of criticism can have on that person. Sure. You know, there's a lot of cases that have been reported about suicide following cyberbullying, for example. You know, especially in teenagers.
No, and that's getting worse and worse as every year goes on. Unfortunately, it's going to take a lot of, you know, societal effort, parents' effort, and to really, really put a halt to it, because it's, you know, unfortunately, kids follow the cool trends of the day, like I did, you know, Britney Spears and all that back in the 90s. So, Doctor, thank you so much for being on this first episode of Keal. It's an honor. Our guests loved you on all the Spiritless episode. You gave such great insight, such great wisdom, and those will stay on the platform. So, anyone who's interested can definitely revisit those that we did with the doctor. And where can our audience find out more about you, connect with you? Because no matter what time, sometime now or in the future that they find this episode, they'll always be able to, look you up and seek you out if need be. So where could they do
that? They can find me on Facebook and on Doctoralia. On both websites, there are my contact information. And you can even send messages in case you have specific doubts. And also, the organization I was talking about is called Enlazando Mentes. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube with 2 videos.
Perfect.
Yeah, we're just starting, but you can contact us there. Most of our content is in Spanish, but we post some stuff in English too. And if people contact us through there, we'll be happy to answer.
And if we go towards this whole societal change and you're off all those platforms, can they just come to your house and meet in person and do a live session? Is that possible?
If we come to that, we'll have to do it as our parents used to and be on the yellow page.
All right, we'll create new yellow pages. That's perfect. I would love. Like for our listening viewing audience, we're both the doctor and I were both in Mexico City, and they actually still have these old telephone. I don't know if you call them booths or whatever they are, but these old telephone stations in parts of the city that have graffiti and trash all over them still, but they're still there. They're like little historic monuments. So maybe you can buy a prepaid card and call it too. And while we develop the yellow book, so we'll include all your information for now in the description and in the pinned comments, doctor, so people can look you up, and they would be more than happy, I'm sure, to find out more about you and your work. So thank you so much again, doctor. It was an honor, and thank you for being on this first episode of DevKeal.